Okay, this is for a first name for the Cholim of Klal Israel. So we asked this Rav Lewenstein, who's been at the Kollel for many a year, marriage out of the faith is not considered a derisa. It's not specifically mentioned as a derisa, but what he said was it's a very serious avera, and it's nothing to be taken lightly and shouldn't be done. And because what in the Torah it says you should not marry into the 7 nations, including the Canaanite nations. It doesn't mention other nations, but these days we don't know if they exist. And there was King Sancheiriv who dispersed all the nations all over the world. He was killed by the Jews. So the Rambam, he looked in the Rambam, this Rav, and he said it's a very, very serious thing, along with homosexuality. It's nothing. It shouldn't be taken lightly. That's what I wanted to say. Even though it's not considered a derisa specifically. I don't know. What do you, Damon? Anything?
I'm just saying, does he really compare it to homosexuality where the punishment is stoning?
He said they're both bad because a woman on woman relationship is not.
No. We have no issue with that. I mean, and most of us would like to watch on occasion, but
no, but it's not a good thing. But it's not as serious because
you're recording. You better stop recording that.
Yeah. Damon, now you're the one that needs to cut this from the recording. So he said it's a Rambam. It's not. It's a very serious thing to marry out of the faith.
No, I get it, but
what he said was also if somebody has
it's not
a
the
fling,
same as homosexuality. It's not.
But they're both bad. They're both bad. They're not good. What the Rambam said is not a good thing about.
I'm not saying it's marrying out of the faith, but you can't compare the derisa to Rabbanan.
Okay, no, he was. It wasn't. I'm just saying he was discussing it also. Okay. He was going through the Rambam in that same chapter.
Okay.
And also, in terms of. If somebody has a fling with a non-Jew, like a one-night stand, it's not a good thing, but it's not as bad as because marriage is considered. It's not a marriage in Yiddishkeit because you can't marry a non-Jew. But if you set up a home and you go to court and you have a court ceremony and you live together, then that is actually considered a marriage, even though halachically it's not, because a Jew can't marry anyone but a Jew. So it's so a one-night stand or a fling with a non-Jew is not as bad as actual marriage or formal permanent relationship, should we say. That's what we were discussing, amongst other things, which I can go into tomorrow another time.
No, thank God. Let me just tell you just my story, because you know my background. I went through all of this. I've done it. So now I'll just tell you from my side, thank God I did it the right way around. I did it, and thank God I'm from now. And I've done tshuva for this, and I'll never do it again. So thank God, because there's some people that were from and have become married out, and they know sure. That's a big problem, you know. But anyway, thank God, you guys saved me. I would have been in serious trouble because I was in a mess without realizing it, and I couldn't do tshuva because I didn't believe really in Hashem. You're going to do tshuva when you believe. So thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I just wanted to mention that and other stuff, while it's still fresh, we can talk about that on Monday, possibly. I should remember. Okay. My mind won't go blank by then. That will still be fresh in my mind. Okay. Let's continue. Go weiter, Damon.
I doubt your mind.
Brush your teeth and go weiter.
Go weiter, yeah. With all right. So we just touched on the concept the other day on the 71st daf in Bet. So the Gemara, I just want to actually share my screen, and then you guys will see what I'm talking about. Kev, just read the beginning. If one stole.
Okay. If one stole. Okay, second paragraph.
Hang on a second.
If one
let me just see where it is. No, here, where my mouse is.
The mice are there. Okay. Or if one stole an ox or sheep from his father and then slaughtered or sold it, and his father died afterwards.
All right, stop there. That's what this is the entire issue about what we're dealing with now. Okay. So, Gavin, you pausing. I see your big finger there. Generally, people only give me the finger once I mess up.
No, I'm
Okay.
Didn't realize it was off balance.
All right. Yeah. There's a delay between your voice and the image. I don't know if you're losing data.
You are frozen. Yeah, that's right. The image is frozen. The audio is still coming through.
Me, but I can hear you guys
now you
clearly.
can.
No,
don't worry about it. I'm on my phone.
You're fine now. You're fine.
Okay.
Okay. I need a holiday. Gosh. Oh, gosh. All right. So the Gemara cites the clause of the Mishnah that reads exactly as Kevin read it, and I'm sure Gavin can read it and Arthur. If one stole an animal from his father and slaughtered or sold it, etc., and his father died afterwards, he pays the full fivefold payment. So the Gemara inquires, Rava inquired of Rav Nachman, if one stole an ox of two partners and slaughtered it, and then admitted his liability to one of them, what is the law? So firstly, we need to see how this case equates to a person that steals from his father and then slaughtered or sold the animal that he stole, and his father died afterwards. And how does this affect the fourfold or fivefold payment? So what we're saying here is there's two business partners. Okay, I like Gavin, but I don't like Gavin's business partner. So I say to Gavin months afterwards, Gavin, I was desperate for the money. I'm sorry, but listen, I did wrong. I sold your portion of the ox and your partners. Here's your portion back, and I'm admitting to you. And since I'm admitting to you, even if witnesses come later, although I don't think anybody saw the incident, there's no penalty to be paid as long as I'm giving you what you owe. Here's what you owe. And Gavin says quite rightly, and my partner's money. I said, I don't like the guy. You like the guy. I don't know what you're talking about. And you said to me, Day, I don't want to get involved. I don't want to upset my partner. So I say to you, Gavin, tell your partner what I did. So he comes to me, grabs me by the scruff of the neck, and he says to me, where's my half of the ox? And I turn around to him and I said, what ox? And he said, no, you paid. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. There is no ox. Or I turn around to him and I said, well, you sold me your share. And then at that point, he says to me, what are you talking about? Sold you? I said, yes, I got your portion of the ox, but I had a business deal with you that your partner didn't know, and I paid you already. Or I could say, what are you talking about? What ox? I never stole it. Because at that point, I think there's no witnesses. And what happens is Gavin's partner, who's a surly guy, not a nice guy like Gavin, sues me in court. And he puts notices around town. If you saw my ox called Betsy, and Betsy was stolen at this address, kindly come to me. And two people come to Gavin's business partner and say to him, yes, I saw Damon stealing the ox. In that case, it's a court case. Now I've got a problem. Because if it comes to court, we know that, and I've sold it to somebody else, or I've slaughtered the ox that I stole from two partners, I'm eligible for the fourfold or fivefold payment. But not for Gavin's share, because any theft that you admit to and you make restitution on, even if witnesses come later, you don't have to pay the penalty. There's no knas for that. There's only a knas for non-admittance, okay? Because you're troubling the court. So I technically owe Gavin's partner his half share and then four or fivefold payment of his share. So that's what we're dealing with here. So the Gemara is saying, is that a case at which we're dealing with a similar case? If one stole an animal from his father and slaughtered or sold it, etc., and his father died afterwards, he pays a four or fivefold. So we're talking about a man who has got maybe 4 or 5 brothers. Let's just put it like that. He's got five brothers, okay? And in that particular case, well, he's got 4 brothers, and himself. There's 5 kids. And in that particular case, you could say that he himself is set to inherit a certain portion, maybe 1/5, and each of his brothers inherits a 1/5 share because there are 5 sons the father has. Okay, so then on the portion that he stole, he's going to inherit it. So, basically, he doesn't have to pay back the portion that he stole that he's to inherit. And the 5-fold payment for stealing an ox on his share, which would be 1/5. Because again, it goes to the estate of the father. He isn't eligible for that because it would have come to him. So now what happens is there's whatever the remainder is of the ox, which is belonging to the family estate, plus the 5-fold payment for the ox minus his share. So we're saying, do we equate the case to those of business partners where his brothers are like the business partner where you owe money to and you owe a share to, but you don't owe the full amount? That's what we're actually discussing here. Is the case analogous? That's what Rav inquired of Rav Nachman. Because he said, if one stole an ox of 2 partners and slaughtered it, and then admitted his liability to one of them with respect to his shares, Rashi explains, but denied liability to the second partner, that is, he admitted to one of the partners that he stole and slaughtered an animal in which the partner had a share, but when confronted by the second partner, he denied liability to him. Okay, so what's the law? In other words, what is the law if witnesses come later and testify that the thief had indeed stolen and slaughtered an ox that was owned by these 2 partners? Does the thief then make a 5-fold payment to the second partner for that second partner's share in the animal or not? So obviously the thief is exempt from paying the 5-fold payment for the first partner's share, because one who admits to a fine is exempted from paying that fine, even if witnesses come and testify to his guilt afterwards, as ruled by Rav. Okay? So the Gemara's inquiry only pertains to the second partner's share, guys. In other words, can there be liability to pay only half the 4-fold or 5-fold payment for the second partner's share or not? Why? Because what's the law? Do we say when the merciful one stated in his Torah, in Shemot chapter 21, verse 37 in Exodus, the thief shall pay 5 cattle in place of an ox? It implies, but not 5 half cattle in place of an ox. Or perhaps the merciful one stated in his Torah that the Torah shall pay 5 cattle in the place of an ox, and this even includes paying 5 half cattle in place of an ox. In other words, does 5 cattle connote that the penalty is applicable only when there's liability to 5 whole cattle? In other words, there's liability for the full amount. Or does the Torah merely mean to penalize the thief to pay 5 for 1? And he can be held liable to pay the 5 half cattle for the second partner's share of the animal. That's what it's asking. Are there any questions up until this point, guys?
Just one point. So it says 5 half cattle is because of the partnership, because the other partner will pay the other half 5. Is that right? To make up the complete half? Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. So don't concentrate on the fractional portions. This is what also threw me off. What you got to do is concentrate on this. If a thief stole an ox and then slaughtered or sold it, he then becomes eligible to pay the 4 or 5-fold payment. Okay, so that's all you got to know. Now, he likes the one guy that he stole from, and he said, listen, mate, I did wrong. Here's your share of the animal, and I don't have to pay the 4 or 5-fold penalty because I'm coming clean. As far as that penalty, that knas is concerned, it's only if it goes to court, but not through one's own admittance, by the way. It's the same thing in terms of the thief shall pay double. We learned it's only if you trouble the court. But if you go to the person afterwards and said, I did the wrong thing, I feel bad, you only have to give him back what you took, what you stole. Penalty is only when you're trying to circumvent justice. You've aggravated people, you've aggravated the court system. There's witnesses that come, but a penalty is not due, a knas. We learned that in the very beginning, unless the court is troubled. So as long as I make restitution to one of the partners and come clean before there's any even drama, there's no problem. I've settled him his share. The second partner, I don't like him. I denied liability to him because the first partner went to tell his partner because he said, listen, this guy stole your thing. And when he was confronted, he said, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't steal anything. Anyway, the second partner's got the needle with him. He finds witnesses by posting notice boards, goes to court, and then you're eligible not only for the partner share, but the Gemara wants to know, do you then pay half the payment of the five times the amount due? Does that make sense? Because if you steal an animal and slaughter or sell it, you owe 5 times what you took. So do you owe that portion to the second partner, which would be 5 times and his 50% share of that, as well as his 50% share of the animal if they were equal partners? So it's saying, does Hashem, the merciful one, say that you must pay 5 oxen in the place of an ox? Or is it saying 5 half oxen in the place of a half an oxen stolen? Meaning, are we just talking about that the penalty is 5 to 1? Or do we say that it actually has to be the whole animal that's stolen and you get 5 times the exact full capacity animal you stolen, and the pasuk doesn't work in half measures? It doesn't work in fraction payments. It would waiver the 4-fold or 5-fold in that regard if you stole a sheep or an ox. If there was a part of it, you'd have to pay. So we're saying, is the pasuk sticking to for one full entire ox you pay 5 oxen, or does it say you're paying 5 times what you stole? That's the question of the Gemara. And why is it asking him the question of if one stole from his father and then slaughtered or sold the animal afterwards, do you pay a fraction of the 5-fold penalty if you stole an ox? Well, quite simple, because the thing of it is, who was going to inherit the estate eventually? The brothers. So in other words, you got your inheritance by stealing that. That's taken out of the equation. You don't have to pay a 4-fold or 5-fold to yourself, but the brothers, you owe them their share for their portion of the animal you stole, respectively according to how many brothers you have. And therefore, it's asking, is the 5-fold payment for the ox that you stole also proportionate? In other words, you pay the brothers their share of that, divided by the number of brothers. Or do we say there's no 5-fold payment for stealing an ox because at the end of the day, you had a share in it, and the Torah doesn't give out portions. In other words, it gives out 5 whole oxen for an oxen that was stolen, but it doesn't work on 5 half oxen. So the Torah wants to know, is it all or nothing? Do they work out fractional amounts, or do they work out that it has to be an entire ox? That's the question, Kev. Does it make sense?
They work. You just say it again. They have to work out.
I'm saying the Torah wants to know as follows. I'm gonna just repeat the bottom line of it. It says, basically, does it work according to, if you look at Shmot Exodus chapter 21 verse 37? If you're looking at the exact wording, the thief shall pay 5 cattle in place of an ox. So that implies, if you're looking at the literal meaning, but not 5 half cattle in the place of half an ox. In other words, if you look at the literal meaning, it's talking about an entire ox, you pay 5 ox in place of it. It doesn't talk about fractions if you look at the literal meaning. Or perhaps it's asking, does the merciful one state in this Torah, the thief shall pay 5 cattle in place of an ox, implying that even 5 half cattle in place of half an ox, meaning implying it's you pay 5 times the infraction or theft. So is it talking about a literal concept, or can it apply it to a fraction thereof? Makes sense. Gav, just give Kevin a summary for a second. Just checking something in the oven.
Kevin?
Yeah.
How does it good? I can't see the.
You said. So that's okay.
So just ask me so what do you want to know, and then I'll help.
What Damon just said. You give a.
Okay.
He said, "Is it a fractional?" Okay.
Okay, so look, I can't give it over like that.
Literal? Is it? If you talk about being literal, about fractional concept.
Yeah. So so normally, if you slaughter an animal, what's it called? If you slaughter it or if you sell it, then automatically by default,
fivefold payment, yes,
full fivefold payment. But now, what happens if? So what happened? He gave you that first example where the animals, what's it called? There were two partners. So he returned the money. He recompensated the one partner, but he didn't recompensate the other one. So the other one, because he recompensated the first one, he doesn't have to pay a penalty with the first one, but he has to pay a penalty with the second one, because the second one's going to take him to court because he didn't pay him. So he's going to take him to court. He's going to have to pay a penalty. But now what we want to know is, will that penalty apply? Because it says from Hashem that you're going to pay a full fivefold payment. But it doesn't talk about fractions. So this is now, do you understand? There's only there's like only half an animal that's owing now, because he's refunded the one partner, but he hasn't refunded the other. So you've only got like half an animal that's actually owing. Plus, you theoretically owe half the penalty. So you owe half of the 5, which is 2.5. So that's the fraction. So can a penalty be 2.5? Can it be a fraction? That's really what Damon's saying.
Did he refund the one of the partners in full? The full 4
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. No, not in full. No. Only his share. Portion. He paid his share in full. But so let's say he slaughtered it, so he couldn't give the ox back to them. But if let's say he sold the ox for $100, right? 100 shekels. He sold the dollars. Sorry, he sold the. See, I'm not a teacher, so that's why I use dollars. I'm more of an accountant. So let's say he sold that ox for 100 shekels. He gave 50 shekels to the one owner. He admitted that he stole it. He didn't have to. He admitted. So because he admitted, he doesn't owe any penalty. So he admitted to him, and he gave him $50, and he kept the other $50. He was supposed to give the other $50 to the second partner, but he didn't, because he didn't like the second partner. So he didn't give it to him. So because of that, the second partner takes him to court, and he says, and he comes with witnesses. Now, because he comes with witnesses, and they know that he stole it, he's now liable for the four-five-fold payment. But he's already paid the one partner the 50. He admitted it. So there's no penalty due there. So there's only a penalty due with the second partner. So that penalty, it amounts to 2.5 like oxen. And so what we want to know is, because in the Torah it doesn't say directly that it can be fractional. It only talks about 4 or 5. So this is this whole discussion. Can you actually take it in half, the penalty in half?
So, Kevin, I want to ask you a question. How does this relate to when one stole from his father and then slaughtered or sold the animal? That's what I want to know. I want to know from you how you understand that's correlated with the relationship with two business partners. That's what I want to understand, to just see.
What's the relation? What's the connection?
Yeah, why did they bring the two of these issues together?
No, don't know.
Okay, so that's, and by the way, I learned from Rabbi Goldschmidt tonight, when he gave a drosha, he was talking about Shemitah and various other things, that, I was thinking, like, do we fly through things like Daf Yomi, or do we do things properly? And he said that no doubt there's this concept that you have to actually understand what you've learned, because otherwise, what are you racing through? What have you actually, what have you done, actually? So the fact of it is, we can't be too hard on ourselves to say, oh, well, we're not keeping this particular pace or that particular pace. And he made me understand that it's far better to leave a Gemara understanding what the daf is about, even if it takes a bit longer, than just missing it. Otherwise, what's the point? So the reason it brings the case of the business partners is it's talking about, does the pasuk say that there is even a concept you can pay a certain share of the penalty? Or is it a case where it's only eligible in its entirety. So just like a son that steals from his father and then sells or slaughters the animal while the father is still alive, the brothers are going to inherit it at a certain point. He doesn't owe the brothers the full amount of the penalty. Why not, Kev?
So the brothers?
Yeah. Listen, yeah.
Which brothers? Are they the owners of the...
When you read the Mishnah, it says, if a son stole from his father and then slaughtered or sold the animal, okay, he pays the 4 or 5-fold payment. That was in the Mishnah we read. Now, you read to me. He pays the 4 or 5-fold payment. So that makes sense while the father is alive.
Alive.
Okay. But when the father died, there's a problem. Because if the father's alive, well, then it's quite simple. You owe the father everything. You owe him, if you stole an ox from him, you stole it from the father in his entirety because the father's alive. So then you owe 5 oxen in the place of an ox, or 4 sheep in the place of a sheep.
Ah, okay.
But when the father dies, now all of a sudden it's like partners.
There's an estate.
It's an estate. So you inheriting some of it, and your brothers are inheriting some of it. So if a person, if there's a guy with 5 brothers, and there's a 5-fold payment for stealing an ox, okay, because the father already died. Basically, does he give each of his brothers an ox? Because he owes 5 oxen, but he doesn't pay an oxen to himself. He's one of the shareholders. He's one of the inheritors. So does he give each of his brothers an ox in lieu of the ox that he stole? Plus, the ox that he stole, he divides that portion by 5 in terms of the... well, he doesn't have to divide it by 5, because if he's given 5 oxen in the place of the ox, when each brother gets an ox, that brother was only entitled to 1/5 of the ox. So now, like, the brother's gotten the whole ox. Do you understand what I'm saying? So, Kevin, it's not a problem when the father's alive, because you fulfill the pasuk, because when the person steals from their father and then sells or slaughters the animal, it's only the father one is owing money to. So if he steals an entire ox, he pays 5 oxen back. But now all of a sudden, if the father dies and he steals it from the estate, he's stealing it from his brothers, just like he's one of the business partners, so he obviously doesn't have to pay a penalty to himself. It's just like a case where you're stealing from 2 business partners and you're friends with the one and you feel bad and you pay him back his share of the actual animal. You don't have to pay a penalty because you've admitted it, but do you then have to pay half the penalty of the 5-fold payment, 50% of it, to the second partner? Because you denied the case with the second partner, goes to court, they're witnesses, now you owe the penalty. So it's just like a case where a person has brothers, is do you give a fraction of the amount? Why are you giving the brothers a fraction? Well, let's just take 2 brothers. Let's just take 2 brothers. So the ox is worth 200 zuz that you take. And your brother's entitled to, I'm not using the term you, Kevin, God forbid. I'm saying Reuven, it's Reuven and Shimon are brothers. So Reuven steals it, an ox, and he's entitled to keep 50%. And his brother, Shimon, is entitled to keep 50%. So now on the brother's share, is he entitled to pay the brother 5-fold divided by 50%? In other words, like 2.5 oxen. So does the Pasha talk about half shares, meaning that when it says you take 5 oxen in the place of an ox, does it say that you have to pay for the entire ox, and anything that you steal in portions, you don't have to pay penalties in portions? You obviously have to make restitution on the principal amount. Or does it say it as a concept and not to be taken literally in the Pasha, that you pay 5 times what you took?
So,
does that make sense? One is conceptual, one is literal.
Just a question on that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I just thought of this now. So he decides to only pay half of the half of the fivefold payment to one of the partners. So if that other partner goes to court,
No.
Is this guy going to be liable for
No.
the full fivefold payment? Because
No.
he never admitted it.
No, that's how to look at it. So this is how you look at it. It's a great question.
He must pay the other half, basically. That's it.
No. That's not the question, because let's pose it again with partners, and then we'll talk about brothers. I steal an ox from Gavin and his business partner. I feel bad. I went through a bad financial period, and then what happened is I decided to pay
Gavin's gone off.
I know, but he's heard this part. So I've decided to pay Gavin back his share. He's got load shedding. So I've decided to pay Gavin back his share. Gavin's back on.
Oh, okay. It was just a minor blip. So you've decided to pay Gavin back his share only his share.
Yeah, I don't like his business partner. So Kevin, okay, let's take a case of two business partners. I'm in desperate need of money, so I take Gavin's ox, and then I sell the ox afterwards, right? And then I feel bad because Gavin, I like him. So then I decide to tell Gavin, listen, Gavin, here's your share of the ox. I've got 400 zuz of it. Here is 200 zuz. And Gavin says, well, what about the 200 zuz for my partner? I said, I don't like the guy. You can tell him to speak to me. When his partner goes to speak to me, I'll say to him, I don't know what you're talking about. I never stole anything. Partner's upset. He puts notices around town. And then he finds two witnesses that happen to see me steal it, because I don't remember having witnesses because I was fraught drunk. Okay, so now I've got a problem. I don't have to pay a penalty on Gavin because I admitted to him before. So even if witnesses testify to the crime afterwards, I've paid Gavin. Now I only owe a penalty because I never admitted to it. Because remember, with a knas, a penalty, you're off the hook if you admit to the theft. If you steal an animal and then slaughter or sell it, but you tell the guy before it comes to court, there's no penalty for a fivefold. There never is. So I only owe Gavin's business partner his 50% share of the fivefold payment for stealing an ox. Does that make sense? So I would technically owe Gavin's partner, because I paid Gavin out of a 400 zuz ox. I've given Gavin 200. I owe Gavin's partner 200 zuz times 5 for stealing an ox. I owe him 1,000 zuz. Well, the equivalent of 50% of 5 oxen.
Because it wasn't admitted, basically.
It wasn't admitted. Now, it's the same thing when you've got two brothers, Reuven and Shimon. And Reuven stole from after his fathers died, he stole from the estate, and his brother's entitled to half of it. So therefore, do we say that there's no penalty owing to the brother because the Torah doesn't see half payments? Because the pasuk literally says you pay 5 oxen in the place of an ox. It doesn't talk about half payments. Or do we say we take the concept and we say that you pay 5 times what you stole? So if Shimon is entitled to 50% of the estate, then he pays the brother 5 times the oxen that he stole divided by 2, because he's only entitled to his brother 50%. Because Reuven keeps the other 50%. There's no penalty on his amount he stole, but in his brother's portion, he owes him 5 times the amount of his brother sues him. That's what it's trying to bring the case. If the father's alive, there's nothing to talk about, because if the father sues him, took an entire oxen which didn't belong to him and his brother yet, because they hadn't inherited it, and yet he then gives his father 5 oxen for the ox that he took. That's easy when the father's alive. It's when the father's dead that they're asking the question. You see?
And so, but the point is, He already admitted, even though he paid one of the brothers, one of the partners. Let's talk about the partners. He's already admitted.
Yeah, so no, but he can't just admit. He has to pay back the one partner, he has to compensate him for what he stole. The primary value of what he stole he has to pay back. Upon admittance and repayment, he doesn't have to pay the penalty, but he can't just say admit and not pay back.
He can't only admit to one partner, not the other.
No, you're missing what
I'm saying. He admits once. Is that considered as admitted to the second guy or not?
No, not at all. Because when the second guy says, "Where's my money?" He said, "I don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah, he's denying. He's denying that he.
Yeah. So in other words,
he pays half plus the fivefold payment.
No, not fivefold. Fivefold of his 50% share.
Yes. So
yeah.
If it were okay, so if it was worth 200, it would be 200 plus 500.
Can I send another link quickly just to get this clear, and then we're done on this? We can go back to the analysis.
No, Damon, there's definitely a power failure. Just carry on. Why? How many minutes you got there? I can't see it.
Have you got power failure now?
Not yet, but I think in 5 minutes it's going to be on.
Oh, is it? All right, so we...
Just say it quickly again, Damon. Okay, just say...